right, I think we're live. So we'll get started with the financial aid parent night. Thank you all for those who are attending with us virtually, probably from the comfort of your own home, on your couch. Thank you for coming out tonight. We have Debra Slade, who's the Assistant Director of Outreach at UNC Greensboro, with us tonight. She's going to be talking all things financial aid for our college-bound seniors. So without further ado, I'm going to hopefully hand things off to Miss Slade, and hopefully this goes smoothly. This is our first time trying this. One other thing before I hand it over to Miss Slade, if you would like to ask questions, feel free to ask questions in the chat. And at the end of this session, once Ms. Slade is done presenting, then we'll have time for her to answer questions. So now I'll finally hand it over to Ms. Slade.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm glad to be here. As Jonathan said, I'm the Assistant Director for Outreach of the UNCG Financial Aid Office, and one of the things I get to do as part of my job is get to talk to parents and high school seniors and people who are getting ready for college and just kind of going through that whole financial aid process, just so you know what's going on. I do have some slides I want to help you, that hopefully will help you see exactly what the process is all about. So if you just bear with me for a second, I'm going to go ahead and put those up and get those ready. And we're just going to go through those. Take notes as you see fit. If you decide that, something you didn't understand something, just, put your question in the chat, as Jonathan said, and we'll take those questions at the end. But first of all, I just want to go through, what we're going to cover tonight. So we're going to talk about what is financial aid, who can get financial aid, how do you apply, what happens after you apply, and then where can you get more information. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the RDS, or the Residency Determination System, or Service rather, near the end. So hopefully we'll be able to answer all of your concerns about that. So let's go ahead and dive right into what is financial aid. Well, it is money to pay for college or career school. And it comes in two different forms. You have gift aid, that's grants, scholarships, that's money that does not have to be repaid. And then you also have self-help aid, which it comes in the form of loans, like student loans, parent loans, also in the form of employment. And that can be through federal work study or just through having a part-time job that you're using to pay for college expenses. And then there's family savings. Again, this is self-help, things that you have amassed, savings that you have put aside for your college funding. So again, these are all resources that are available to help pay for college. So that's what financial aid is, and it includes all of these things. It's not just one of those, so it's a combination. So financial aid comes from the federal government, from state governments, from colleges and universities, from local and private organizations, and I just mentioned savings, so there are college savings plans. For example, North Carolina has the 529 plan that you can take advantage of. But the biggest source of financial aid is probably the federal government. There are billions of dollars awarded each year to students in the form of federal Pell Grant, work study, student loans. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go through, just to kind of give you a little bit more detail on those things. And here we go, right on target. Here's my slide. The federal Pell Grant is a need-based program. Now that means that you have to qualify for that. It's a program that provides a grant for students to use toward their college education. It follows them. So if a student's eligible for a Pell Grant at one school, typically they're eligible at all schools that they're going to be attending. The funds are paid out based on the level of enrollment. So if a student is full-time, they get the full amount that they're eligible to get. If they are part-time students, then they get a reduced amount. I mentioned the federal work study program, which is an allocation of funds that students can earn while they're enrolled. They have the opportunity of working on campus and various departments like the financial aid office, where they get to work with me and my fine colleagues. And they also have an opportunity to work in some of the community off-campus programs. And this can be a wonderful way for them to expand their work ethic, to expand their networking opportunities, as well as earning money to help pay for some of those expenses. And these are funds that do not have to be repaid. The great thing about a work-study program is, unlike a regular part-time job, students are allowed to work around their class schedule. So they don't have to make accommodations for their classes as far as work is concerned. Work is considered after they've completed their class schedules. So they will work with their supervisors, their workplace supervisors, to make sure that they are not working during times when they should be in class or studying. And then the last major program in the federal arsenal is the Federal Direct Loan Program. And these are funds that have to be repaid. The two types of loans that are available to students would be the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan. The subsidized loan is based on financial need. So that means students have to qualify for that. The funds are limited based on grade level. And then there's the unsubsidized loan that does not require financial need, but they all require application through the FAFSA, which we're going to talk about as well. The major difference between the two loans is that the subsidized loan has no interest while your student's enrolled at least full-time. At least half-time. So once your student is below half-time, then interest begins on that loan. The unsubsidized loan, unfortunately, has interest from the time that they are enrolled. So that means that they will be able to either pay the interest as it accrues, or they would be able to let the interest continue while they are still enrolled. So, again, we encourage students to pay the interest as they go. Hang on a second, let me make sure I can get to the next slide. We encourage students to pay the interest as they go so that they don't have a massive amount of accrued interest in the term when they start into repayment. So we can talk more about that as students get into the loan process. The last loan that's listed there is the PLUS loan. And that is a loan that's available to parents so that they can borrow based on, having on the need to help their students out for the benefit of the student. So this is something that you don't want to pass up that. You want to ask questions about that. You may not automatically see that listed in your student's award offer, but it is something that you can ask about. And that way you can also take part in helping your student if you don't want to pay out of pocket. But again, don't worry about this right now. This is something we can discuss a little bit later and get you more information about. So next on our list of sources are state aid programs, specifically the state of North Carolina aid programs. For most students who are going to be attending four-year institutions, they'll be able to get the UNC need-based grant, the North Carolina Educational Lottery Scholarship, and if they are enrolled in private schools, they would be able to get there's a need-based scholarship that's available. And also in community college, if they're going to a community college, there is a community college grant for students, and they can also get the lottery grant. There's also a program for students in certain major categories and certain career paths called the Forgivable Educational Loans for Service. Now this starts out as a scholarship, and students are committed to working for a certain period of time within North Carolina in certain high need areas. And for every year that they work, a certain portion of that loan is forgiven. But if they do not complete the service requirement, then it's a loan and it has to be repaid. So please navigate over to the CFNC's website. It is the cfnc.org. And if you want more information about FELS, it's cfnc.org/FELS. So make sure that you are, you take advantage of that information. So who can get federal aid? Well, here's a list of some of the requirements. First of all, you must be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, hold a high school, be a high school graduate or have your GED, be enrolled in an eligible degree program. That means that you have to be in a program that is going to award a bachelor's degree, or if you're in a master's program, you're going to get a master's degree, or an eligible certificate program. For example, there are some programs that students can enroll in after they've gotten a bachelor's degree that will award them a certificate. And then there are licensure programs for teacher licensure as well. And some of those programs are eligible. Students must have a valid Social Security number. If you're a male, you must be registered for selective service, and you have to be making satisfactory academic progress. And that just means, very briefly, that you are successfully moving toward your degree each semester that you're enrolled, that you're earning credits that will grant you that degree at the end of the period of enrollment. So each school has a specific set of standards for the academic progress program at their school. Every school has to have one, but there may be some differences depending on the school. So that's a question that you'll definitely want to make sure that you're asking. So the whole philosophy about financial aid is that the family is responsible for paying for college up to the extent that they're able to. And that's where the federal aid programs and other financial aid programs come into play. So in order to determine whether or not students are eligible for aid, or to help determine a family's ability to pay, the free application for federal student aid is the application that's used to determine what's called a need analysis. And that determines where students fall within an index of need for need-based aid. Some schools also require the CSS profile. So make sure, as you're looking at the schools that you're considering, check with their financial aid offices to make sure that you're completing all of the applications that are required to make sure that you're going to be considered for all of the aid options that are available. UNCG does not require the CSS profile. We only require the FAFSA. So make sure that, again, you're following through with the financial aid office at the schools that you're considering. So we talked about the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA. It opens every October 1st for the next academic year. So it is open right now for next fall for the 2021-2022 academic year. It opened October 1st. Students can go online to FAFSA.gov or studentaid.gov and start the application. It is required, as I said before, for all types of federal aid. It's also required for some state aid programs. Once you complete the FAFSA, the results of the FAFSA are sent to the schools that you list. And students can list up to 10 different schools on the FAFSA. And each school listed will get a copy of the student's data, and the student aid report, which the student gets, will confirm the data, will summarize the information that's been provided on the FAFSA, and give you a couple pieces of information that whether or not the student is eligible for the federal Pell Grant, their student loan eligibility, and some information about the schools that have been listed. The FAFSA and the student aid report do not give you the actual financial aid award that your student will be receiving from each college. Each school will do that. So as you go through the process and you get ready to file the FAFSA, there's some things you're going to need. So make sure that you have completed the FSA ID, that is our username and password to log into the system. And I'm going to go a little bit into more detail on that in a bit. You will also need the 2019 tax and income information for both student and parent, if the student had income and if they filed a return. Social Security number for both student and parent. Only students are required to have a Social Security number. If parents do not have a Social Security number, then they could just enter zeros in the area where it requests parent social. If you have a driver's license, that information will be required. If you're not a U.S. citizen, but you have been naturalized, you'll have your alien registration number. So you'll make sure that you enter that information. I'm sorry, if you're non-citizen, eligible non-citizen, you'll have your green card and your alien registration number, and that information will be added onto the FAFSA. They'll also be requesting your untaxed income information, so make sure you have that. Asset information, for example, your savings, checking account, your money market account, stocks and bonds. You will not need to list the value of your home on the FAFSA, and nor will you need to list the value of any retirement account. So keep that in mind. Sometimes that does pose a problem, but if you find that you made a mistake, you can always go back and make that correction. So I mentioned the FSA ID, and this is a very important piece of information that you're going to need. This is a combination of a username and password that allows you to act as your electronic signature on the FAFSA. It also gains you access to other federal sites that have to do with financial aid to allow you to complete loan documents, loan processes. Students can see their loan, their financial aid history. So it's really an important piece of information, and it's just one of those, you want to safeguard that because it is key to your personal identifiable information, such as your social security number, your date of birth. So you want to make sure you keep that secure. Each parent and student must have their own separate FSA ID. So if you haven't already done this, make sure that you're using separate email addresses so that you don't run into the issue of having this information, trying to create a password that's already tied to a different identity. So it is key to that. And when you start setting this up, you want to make sure that you don't use personal information as your username, but use something that you can remember. And again, I'm repeating this, make sure that you and the student are using separate email addresses, and make sure it's an email address, this is for the students, that you will have access to going forward. I discourage you using your high school address. Set up another email address that you can use specifically for this. Your name, social security number, and date of birth we use to verify your identity. So make sure you use your legal name as it appears on your social security card when you're completing all of these documents. This will cut down on delays and misinformation and locked records and not being able to go through the process. It's very important that you answer the challenge questions, that you set up answers that you can remember, because should you get logged out of your account or need to reset your password, these questions will be used to verify your identity so that your account can be unlocked and you can go through and make a new password. One of the things that we encourage you to do is to go through the process of setting up or entering and verifying your email address and your mobile number. That can be used instead of the challenge questions to unlock your accounts and get you back into your account. There's also a mobile app for the FAFSA, and that will require the FSA ID in order to log in. Now, here's a key that you need to remember on that mobile app. Only students can use the FSA ID to log in. So they can get started, they can start their process, parents can log in online to finish their process, and that way you can still do it even if you're not in the same location, you can still have access to that. That comes in handy next year when your students in college and you're at home and you want to make sure you're getting these things done on October 1st. So just keep that in mind. So this is the FAFSA homepage. This is what you'll see. So when you're doing the FAFSA for the very first time, you're going to log in where it says start here. If you have to come back to make corrections or say add a school, then you'll log in under the returning user. And parents, I keep saying this, when you log in, when your student's logging in, you can't use the FSA ID. Your student has to be the one to use the FSA ID. You can log in, you can start the process, but you will need to start it as a parent, and you'll have that option to do that. So I want to touch on quickly and briefly some of the 10 common FAFSA mistakes. So we're going to break this down into two parts. So the first part consists of the very first and probably the biggest mistake that people make is not completing the FAFSA. I can't tell you how many times people say, well, I'm not going to do it because we make too much money, we're not going to qualify. Well, I can definitely assure you that you're not going to get financial aid if you don't complete the FAFSA. You don't know exactly what you would qualify for, and you may not qualify for the Pell Grant, but you may qualify for state funds, which you will need to complete the FAFSA in order to make sure you can be considered for that. You may also be eligible for institutional funds, funds that the school has to offer. They may require the FAFSA. So it's in your best interest to complete this application, regardless of whether you think you may get aid or not. Not using the correct website is another error that mistake that people make. So make sure you're going to FAFSA.ed or studentaid.ed.gov. FAFSA.gov or studentaid.gov. Don't go to anything with a different ending, a dot something else. So it has to be .gov just to make sure you're on the correct site. One way to make sure that you're on the correct site, if you happen to land on a site and they said, hey, just enter your credit card number and we will, complete this process for you for a set fee. You're on the wrong site. Get out of there as quickly as possible. Because going back to the FAFSA, what does the FAFSA stand for? Free application for federal student aid. So you don't want to ever pay anybody to do this application for you. There's too much free help available. Not getting an FSA ID ahead of time is another mistake. Sometimes that is the most difficult and most tedious part of the whole process is getting that ID set up. Once you've done that, then getting the FAFSA completed is probably not as difficult. But if you get hung up with the FSA ID while you're trying to do the FAFSA, then that can delay it. It can get frustrating. So go ahead and do that, get that set up, and then tackle the FAFSA. Not filing by priority dates or missing deadlines. Many schools have early filing windows that put students in a category of priority eligibility, meaning when they get their application and funds are available, they will be able to get those funds as long as you're eligible for them and as long as the funds are available. UNCG has a filing priority period of October 1st through January 15th. So that means if you file within that window, you're considered a priority filer. And if you're eligible for the funds, then you're going to be able to get the full amount that you're eligible for as long as they last. Students filing after that may not be so lucky. The other thing about filing early is that you're assuring yourself of being in the pool of running to get state aid, because that is also one of those funds that typically will run out. And then not using the IRS data retrieval tool. Remember, we talked about you will need your tax information from 2019. Well, you can certainly dig out your tax forms, but an easier way of doing that is letting the FAFSA access your tax information directly from the IRS database. Now I'm thinking as I'm sitting here, I'm going to send this, make a PDF copy of these slides and send that so that you, if that's something that you want, you can have this graphic so that you can kind of walk through the steps. But it's very simple. As you get into the financial section of the FAFSA, depending on how you answer certain questions, you'll be presented with an option to use the IRS data retrieval tool. And you just say yes. And then you'll go ahead and complete the information that's being requested. Make sure that you provide the information as it is on your tax return. So make sure that you don't put your P.O. box. If you had your street address on your return, that would just make sure that your process would go through smoothly. And then once you get that information pulled up in the IRS database, it will ask you, do you want to transfer this information? And you said, yeah, I do. And it will submit it, and then it will transfer it into the FAFSA. Now, once you do that, the information that's transferred from the IRS into the FAFSA will not be visible to you or anyone else. You'll, instead of seeing the actual numbers, you'll see transferred from the IRS in those fields rather than seeing, for example, your tax AGI or the taxes paid. In addition, the information will also not be displayed on the student aid report. It also will show transferred from the IRS. So don't panic if you don't see numbers. You're like, well, I know it should be a number there. don't panic. If you use the IRS data retrieval tool and you see transfer from the IRS, then you know it has been successfully transferred and you are good to go. Okay, so part 2 of our common mistakes include not reading the definitions carefully. And I would also include not reading the instructions and not paying attention to which section you're in. The FAFSA has 2 sections, 2 distinct sections, one for students and one for parents if parent information is required. Parents, if you're helping your student, make sure as you're helping in the student section that you're not answering the questions based on your information, that you're answering and you're helping your student answer the questions based on the student's information. Inputting incorrect information, and again, this stems from maybe misunderstanding which section, and this really gets complicated. You have several students in college and you're sometimes getting social security numbers confused or dates of birth put in incorrectly. So be very, very careful. Make sure that you're putting in the correct information for the correct student. Listing only one college is a biggie, because if you just list one college and you decide that that's not where you want to go, then you've got to go back in and list another college. So it's really a good idea to go ahead and list all of the colleges that you're interested in. You can do up to 10, as I said, and that way you'll make sure that you have not left anyone out. Don't worry if other colleges can see who all you listed. We can't. We can only see our listing on the FAFSA, on the data when we get it. We don't know who else you listed. And you don't have to wait until you are admitted to a school to list them on your FAFSA. Go ahead and put it on there. Not signing the FAFSA is another one of those things that we see typically happening. The FAFSA gives you an opportunity to save the information as you go forward, but saving the information is not submitting. So if you don't get prompted for a signature, then that means that your information has not been successfully, your FAFSA hasn't been successfully submitted. So you want to make sure you go all the way through the end, get to that signature page, and then submit your signature either electronically or by printing out a signature page and then mailing that to the address that's listed on the page. And then our last item on the list is not reporting parent information. This typically happens because there's confusion about which parent do I report. And this a lot of times come about with blended families, divorced families. So, there are so many different scenarios that these types of confusions can arise. For the FAFSA, the parent is described as the biological or legal parent of the student, okay? Biological or legal parent. Now, going further to determine who gets to be put on the FAFSA, and it's pretty, straightforward. If your parents are married and living together, then those are the 2 people whose information you put on the FAFSA. If not, if your parents are not married and living together, you still put them on. So both parents. But if you have a situation where your parents are not together, so if they're divorced or separated and don't live together, then it becomes a little bit more complicated. You have to be a little bit more deliberate about figuring this out. This chart is a great opportunity. It's a great walkthrough to kind of answer some of those questions. So what if, if this, then that type scenario. So I want you to take time to go through that. When we talk about blended families or families that are separated, it does get confusing. If your parents are separated or divorced and they have remarried, then you would provide information about the custodial parent, who's the parent that you live with the most, and that parent's spouse if they have remarried. And I can hear the chatter in the back. It's like, well, wait a minute, that's the step parent, and so why should we put their information? The FAFSA is looking at household information. So if there is a parent and a step parent, they comprise the household, and that is the information that they want to capture on the FAFSA. Now, who is not a parent? Grandparents, if they raised you, are not considered your parents. Other relatives, a friend that you live with, you would not provide those information, those people's information. A sibling that you may live with, an older sibling, those are not considered parents for the FAFSA. If someone has guardianship, again, they would not be considered your parent. If someone has adopted you, that's your parent, and that's the person that you would list on the FAFSA. So I know this can be a little bit confusing. That's why we're here. We can answer these questions. We can help you get through this. So again, if you can go to studentaid.gov and get this chart, it's a great opportunity. If not, I'll definitely send the PDF so that you can take a look at this at your leisure. These are some FAFSA errors that we typically see, and we've already kind of touched on the divorce, remarried parental information. And then we also see typically the Social Security number transposition and in the wrong place, not reporting the step parents' income and earnings, untaxed income not being reported, the incorrect amount of the taxes paid. A lot of times people will pull the amount off of their W-2s. Well, this is how much was withheld. It's not always the amount that was withheld. You have to go by the tax return. And again, if you use a data retrieval tool, most of this stuff is going to be pulled in. Household size can sometimes be a little bit confusing as well, because if you are looking at, if there are other members of your family who live with you, but they have their own resources and they're taking care of themselves, maybe they're just house sharing, they typically would not be considered your household. So typically the household is parents and the student's siblings that also live in the household. And again, if you have questions about, who's in my household, who should I count? These are things that we can help you walk through, if you kind of give us this idea of what your scenario is. And then the number of household members who are in college. Typically, this is pretty easy. If you and your brother or you and your sister are both going to college, then yeah, 2 people in college. It gets a little bit more complicated if you and your mom are in college. In that case, it's just you that would be reported on the student's FAFSA. Mom would not get reported. Mom can report herself and you on her FAFSA if she's applying for aid. Again, I know that can be a little bit confusing, but again, just pop your questions in there and we'll try to make sure we get some understanding for you. And then listing real estate and investment net worth. And I touched on this before about being careful to not list the value of your primary residence. So you don't need to list the value of your home. If you have rental property that you are managing, then that you own, that would certainly go into real estate. And you also would not list the value of any retirement accounts. You would list bank accounts and you would also list any stocks and bonds. Whew, yeah, a lot of information on the FAFSA. So here's some tips. Make sure you meet those early deadlines. Don't wait until you're admitted to file the FAFSA. Make sure you keep copies of all of the documents for your records in case you're selected for verification of self-reported information, and that can happen. Not that you did anything wrong. Typically, the FAFSA applications go through a random process where students' files are selected. There's a notation on the file. On the student aid report, you'll be able to see it. It'll tell you your file has been selected for verification. Your financial aid office will reach out to you and let you know what documents need to be submitted. And we will do that. We will send you messages and we'll let you know what we need to collect from you. Here's a tip and an incentive for using the data retrieval tool. If you use the data retrieval tool, you typically will not need to send us tax documents. So that's a reason to go ahead and get that done. All right, so let's move into what happens after you turn in the FAFSA. So the FAFSA results are in the form of a student aid report, and we touched on that before, and I think I've gone through this. You get to know how much your Pell Grant might be if you're eligible, how much in student loans you're eligible to get, links to the College Navigator for detailed information about the schools that you've listed on the FAFSA, and then each school's financial aid office gets a copy of the FAFSA results. So let's move into, again, because you're like, well, what is all this information that I'm turning in? What do people do with it? What happens? How do you use it? Every school is required to come up with a budget or an estimate of what it will cost a student to attend each academic year. And that's called the cost of attendance. That is not a bill. That is not what has to be paid directly to the school. It's simply an estimate of all of the expenses that come along with going to college. So that number is used. And then remember I talked about when you file the FAFSA, you get a summary of all of the information. You also get what's called an expected family contribution, a number, an index number, that again, schools use that to determine where you fall within a range of eligibility for the need-based aid. So this is how this is used. This is the formula. Cost of attendance minus expected family contribution gives us the eligibility for need-based aid. So that, if you keep that in mind, that will kind of help you understand why your award may look different from school to school, because the cost of attendance is going to be different from school to school. Your expected family contribution will remain the same. That's going to be constant because it's from the same FAFSA data. So you will see differences based on the school and based on what their school has estimated as a cost for expenses for an academic year. So what's made up of those expenses? What's included in that? Well, of course, you have tuition and fees because you can't be in college if you don't pay tuition, right? Or somebody else pays it for you. That would be good. If you're deciding to live on campus, there's room and board. Now, these two costs, tuition and fees, room and board, or a dorm and meal plan for room and board, these are considered direct costs because these are the things that you're going to pay directly to the university and you're going to get directly billed for these things. So these are considered direct costs. Every student would have to pay that if they're living on campus and if they're enrolled. Indirect costs, or things that you don't typically get a bill for, you typically don't have to pay directly to the school, would include books and supplies. And again, this is going to depend on the school that you're attending. Some schools have a method of letting students have their books charged to them. Some schools do not. Transportation is simply what it costs for trips home during the weekend, moving in, moving out, travel during the semester breaks. Again, you're not paying the university for that, but you do have to factor that in because I've noticed that sometimes parents do let kids come home after a certain time that they've been in college. And this joke works a whole lot better when I'm in front of an audience. But you also have personal and miscellaneous expenses. So these are things that are incidentals, like decorations for the dorm, cell phone bill, or maybe buying a new coat or buying something that you need as a result of going off to college. And again, you're amassing these things, but you're not getting a bill from the university. And then if your student is not living in the dorm, they would then still need to factor in where they're going to live and how they're going to pay for that. Again, off-campus housing is not paid to the school. It's paid directly to a landlord. If you're in an apartment or whatever type of living arrangement you have, then you will be paying your rent or whatever your cost is to that entity, not to the school. So that's where we have that difference of the cost breakdown. And again, every school will have a different cost of attendance, okay? So don't panic. So what happens next? After you've been admitted, the school will tell you how much aid you can get at that school. And again, you don't have to be admitted to do the FAFSA, but you do have to be admitted in order for the schools to offer you financial aid. So keep that in mind. And then once you decide what school to attend, stay in contact with the financial aid office to make sure that you completed all of their requirements, you completed and submitted all of the documents, and then they will let you know how you'll get your aid and when you can expect it. All right, so yeah, there's some other stuff that you might want to consider. Once you've gone through the FAFSA process and you've looked for, you've completed all of that application requirements, there are maybe still some things that need to be taken care of that are not covered by aid. So what do? We check with your school to see if there's a payment plan. Many schools have installment plans that let you set up monthly payments to pay the tuition that's not, or pay whatever the costs are that are not covered by financial aid. And then you can use your family savings to make those payments so that you don't have to exhaust it all at once. It also maybe allows you not to have to take out a loan depending on how much you have to cover. If you do need a loan and you've exhausted all of the federal loan options, then there may be private loans. Typically, this only happens if you're going to a private school. In most cases, the federal loan programs will be sufficient to cover your costs at most schools. Now, this next one, tax credits, won't help you on the front end when you're paying for it, your tuition and paying your costs, but it may help you on the back end as you can get tax credits. So make sure you're working with your tax preparer to find out if you qualify for any of the tax credits. All right, so we know that we're living in just, I'm not going to use that word, but yeah, it's interesting right now. And we know that things are probably not the same as when you completed your 2019 tax return. So what do? There's been a change. If you lost a job or if there's been some upheaval in your family situation. Well, one of the things you want to do is, first of all, complete the FAFSA based on the information that's requested. Don't get creative. Don't try to change things. Don't try to use other information. Use exactly what the FAFSA requests. And then contact the school's financial aid office and let them know what's going on. And we will, we'll guide you through the process. We'll let you know what do we need in order to make a review, whether or not this is something that can be considered. So make sure you contact that financial aid office so that we can make sure you're getting the information that you need, and we can help guide you to additional resources, or maybe let you know what options are available for you. And I'm definitely not going to read these slides. Okay, these are finding scholarship opportunities. So yeah, I'm definitely going to send this on as a handout. There's so many different places that you can look for scholarships. I just know because your counseling staff has reached out each year to UNCG to get you information. So I know they're working on your behalf to make sure that you have information about scholarships. So make sure you are following through on any information that they provide for you. These again are some areas and some places that you can start looking. The library, check with your employer to see if there are benefits that come along as a basis of your employment, maybe tuition reimbursement if you do have to pay something out of pocket. If you belong to professional organizations or associations, fraternities, sororities, make sure you're looking at all of those options as well. And then there are private scholarship searches. All of these, again, your counselors have these listed for you, and just make sure that you are following through. These places will not guarantee a scholarship. You do have to do the work. You may have to write an essay. You may have to write or do a video or do a paper or something. You will have to complete an application process. So make sure that you do that and follow through. They will tell you what scholarship opportunities are out there that match some of the information that you provide to them. And then again, some other resources that are just general financial aid resources. Visit us at our website. College Foundation of North Carolina, I cannot say enough. I mean, that is like the go-to place for North Carolina residents to get all of the information that you need about how to plan, apply, and pay for college. Right now, they're right in the middle of the college application week, and they are providing free help for FAFSA, for RDS, for college applications. So make sure you follow through on that. And speaking of that, making sure you go through all of the resources. If you have military affiliation, please don't forget about veterans benefits or military affiliated benefits. Be sure you follow through on that, because that can definitely help out if you're qualified. And then for anyone who may have a disability, vocational rehabilitation services are available to either help with accommodations. They can also help with funding. So make sure you reach out if that is something that you think you might have need of. So just a quick checklist. Make sure you ask lots and lots and lots of questions. And more importantly, write down the answers to those questions. Pay attention to deadlines and just be early with everything. Don't wait until the last minute. That can mean the difference between getting a state grant or getting nothing. Okay, so just make sure that you do that. Parents and students, communicate and partner up. Parents, don't do all of the FAFSA, don't do all of the scholarship searches for your students. Students, don't leave your parents out of the process. You guys need to communicate, because you're working toward this process, and you're going to need help because there's a lot of information. You're going to need help to make sure you're sorting things out, that you're not missing deadlines. So this is a great time to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So I put here, this is a partnership between student and parents. Do your part, but don't do it all. So make sure you're sharing in that. And this one, set up an email address specifically for scholarship searches and financial aid information. So that's separate from any of your other email addresses, so it doesn't get lost in your other inbox and crammed in with your other school mail. And please, please, please pick something for your email address that has some modicum of professionalism. Okay. Yes, please do that. And I say that because I have college seniors who have some really tutti frutti email addresses, and I'm wondering, yeah, you're going to apply for jobs with that. Okay. Okay, soapbox down. Make sure you're attending these college access and paying for college events. Don't miss out on all of these things. And that last item, I want you to, students, make an effort to learn how to manage your money. As you go off to college, there are going to be a lot of things thrown at you. You're going to be managing financial aid. In some cases, you're going to be getting a large sum of money back at the beginning of the semester that you're going to have to budget for the rest of the semester. And mom and dad may not be, readily available to help you walk through that process. So make sure that you're planning. Go ahead and do the financial aid the financial literacies course on CFNC's website. Then you can be entered, say, for a scholarship, okay? So this is free money. All you have to do is go through this thing, learning how to manage money, and you get money. Win-win. So go ahead, go do it now. Go do it now. Okay. All right, so this is our financial aid information at UNCG. You can give us a call anytime, Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. Send us an email at finaid@uncg.edu. I've got a couple of slides here. I want to get into RDS because this is something that you make sure you have to do that. And as I told Jonathan and Montgomery at the top of this is a complete and utter lift from a presentation that was done for counselors last year was participating in. So I'm borrowing it, but I did not create it. But what is RDS and why do I have to do it? So residency determination is a centralized service for determining whether or not you're a resident of North Carolina. And you have to do it so that you can prove that you're a resident, so that you can be eligible for in-state tuition and be eligible for North Carolina state aid programs. Move my head out of the way. All right, so make sure that you do this. Don't miss this step. In many cases, you need to do this before you start the college application, because this information needs to ride so that you are not charged out-of-state tuition even though you've been a resident all your life, okay? Just a few basic things about that. You must be a resident, lived in North Carolina for at least 12 months, and your residency is actually based on your parents' domicile, unless there's a situation where the student can prove something else, and the RDS website has more information about how you would go about that. Typically, non-US citizens with certain visas and immigration statuses are eligible for in-state tuition and state aid. DACA and undocumented students, unfortunately, are not eligible. And if you are McKinney-Vento, then you are not actually automatically classified. You will still have to go through that RDS process, okay? And again, people can help you with that. This is a quick chart that shows you kind of like the differences between what's required for the FAFSA and what's required for RDS. For the FAFSA, if you're a temporary protected status, you may not be eligible for aid. RDS, possible. You have the various categories. And if this applies to you, you'll know what I'm talking about. DACA and undocumented students, we already talked about that. You wouldn't be eligible for federal aid nor for in-state tuition or state aid. For parents without a social security number, remember, students have to have a social security number to do the FAFSA. Parents don't. So for the FAFSA, you would enter all zeros. For RDS, you would enter your taxpayer, your individual tax ID number. So don't get that confused. Don't enter that on the FAFSA. Just enter zeros if you don't have a social security number, but you have a taxpayer identification number. Dependents are required to provide parent information, including income and assets on the FAFSA. You're required to provide your parent information on RDS, but not income and asset information, okay? And then for the tracking, FAFSA gives you an EFC and a data release number, or DRAN. RDS gives you an RCN number that will follow you from school to school, okay? And that RCN number is permanent. The EFC and the DRN are based on the particular FAFSA that you're filing for each academic year. And then a quick timeline, you have 25 days to complete the online application. and you have 25 days to submit your documents. If you have an appeal, so if you're determined out of state, but you think, no, I shouldn't be, you can appeal the decision. You have 10 days to request an appeal. And a reconsideration is different from an appeal. So reconsideration is if you've entered some incorrect information, you can go back and correct that information to make sure that you have, you can correct it. And then if you're still considered out of state after you've corrected the information, then you can do the appeal. And then these are some resources. Basically, just go to ncresidency.org, or you can go to the CFNC website and make sure to click on that page. So I have talked myself silly. I am about ready to take questions. I think we can do that. Let's see, where's my stop share? Come back. So I think, Jonathan, you want to come back in and let's see if we have any questions from the audience at this point. Or if you have questions, there may be something that I missed or something you might want me to clarify.
Yeah, let me check and see. I haven't seen any any comments just yet. So if there was anyone that joined us a little bit late, feel free, if you have questions, leave those questions in the live chat, and I will ask those questions for you to Ms. Slade. While we wait, I'll give you guys a few minutes to ask questions if you want to ask in the chat. Just like Ms. Slade mentioned, we do have a few more days left in CFNC's free college application week. I think it's technically called Countdown to College, but feel free to check out our high school website. On the homepage, there is a button that will link you to our student services page that has all kinds of information regarding CFNC College Application Week. Another thing, Ms. Sheets and I are also holding office hours as well, second block and fourth block, for any students that need help applying to college. So feel free, there's also a link to that on our student services website, as well as our Trinity High School homepage. So feel free to take full advantage of that. Free college application week lasts until midnight, Friday night, this Friday night. So there are a lot of, most of the private schools in North Carolina are going to waive their application fees. And there are several public schools as well. I know Western Carolina is one, East Carolina, just to name a few. I think there are a few others. NCA&T, Winston-Salem State, they are also waiving their application fees. Anyone that qualifies for free and reduced lunch or got a waiver for the ACT or SAT, you would also qualify for a fee waiver, for an application fee waiver. But we would just need to, you just need to talk to either Ms. Sheets or I, and we can help you out with that method. So yeah, check out our website. We have a lot of great information. I know Ms. Sheets worked very hard on a senior planning guide, which is also on our student services website. I mean, the senior planning guide has so much information in it. So definitely take advantage of that. And you're always welcome to talk to Ms. Sheets or I. Going back to the CFNC College Application Week, for the free application, for the waived application fee, you do need to apply through cfnc.org. So you need to have an account for that and apply through CFNC. If you have questions about that or questions about your account name or whatever with CFNC, just talk to Ms. Sheets or I, and we can help you out with that. So it looks like we do have a question. Let's see. So it says, if I need to go in and make changes to FAFSA information, will it mess up anything with colleges if they already are looking at it? Example, remove a personal IRA amount from investment area.
No, it won't mess it up. It will create a new FAFSA record, and for those schools that you have listed, if you don't, as long as you don't take them off the FAFSA, they will get the updated information. They may ask you to provide some documentation to the changes that you made, but typically, they may redo the application. Now, and again, it depends on when you do that. If you make a change now, it's probably not going to mess up anything. They'll just go with the last and most current record. If you do it after the award's done, then you might need to follow up, because typically what happens is once the awarding process has started, the record is locked on the award's locked on the record that the FAFSA was valid at the valid FAFSA record at the time that the award was made. So they may not automatically update that for you. So it's always a good idea to reach out and say, hey, here's my issue. And I would even suggest reaching out and letting the school make the change for you, just to make sure that that change is being made correctly. Now, having said that, most schools have not started to pull in records yet. So that process will probably start next month. So I would say, be a little patient and make sure, wait until then. And as I said before, students won't be awarded aid until they're admitted. And typically for new incoming students, that process will start of sending out the award information, usually early spring, maybe like late February, early March, is sometime in that time frame. So again, don't panic if you don't have financial aid award 2 days after you finish the FAFSA, okay? It takes a little bit of time.
Okay, and it looks like that was our only question. So hopefully that answered your question. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to send us an email, or I know in a previous slide in Ms. Slade's presentation, there's email information and contact information for in UNCG's financial aid department. We always encourage you guys, if you have specific financial aid questions about the school that you're applying to, always reach out to that school that you're interested in or applying to.
Yeah, and Jonathan, I would even say, even if you haven't decided what school, reach out to to any office. We're more than happy to answer those questions for you, because we realize that at this stage of the game, you may not have decided. And it may be more convenient to reach out to a school that's close to you rather than a school that, maybe you're considering far away or you just haven't decided yet. We don't mind answering questions, and we say, even if you're not considering UNCG, we still want to be a resource for you. We still want to answer those questions for you. One thing I thought about as you were talking about the college application week, and I just wanted to remind students to do this. Please take advantage of this week to go ahead and get your applications done. One of the things that you may find is as you're applying to be admitted to certain schools, your admissions application may also be the key to merit-based scholarships. So make sure they have early admits, or they have particular deadlines that you need to submit your applications by in order to be considered for scholarships that are based on merit. Make sure you're following up on that and don't leave that undone. So find out when the early applications are for your different schools, and if that is tied to scholarships, and then find out what all you need to do to make sure that you're maximizing your opportunities. Many times the merit-based scholarships do not require the FAFSA. So they're just based solely on your academic performance. So don't miss that opportunity.
Absolutely. So before we close, just want to encourage you all to check out our student services website. There's a link to it directly on our THS homepage. And if you still have questions after you visit the site, feel free to let Ms. Sheets or I know. Ms. Hall is also a great resource, Ms. Montgomery Hall. She's a great resource as well, especially if you have questions about dual enrollment classes through RCC. But she can also help you out with any college planning, college application process, and that sort of thing. Just want to let you all know that we will post this recording on our website as well, so that you can reference it at any time. And we'll also post the information that Ms. Slade was speaking about, the PDFs, and kind of that contact information. So just be checking our website for that. As soon as the video is processed and we're able to get it posted on the website, we'll get it up. So hopefully we'll get it up in the next day or so. But feel free, if you have questions, feel free to let us know by email and reach out to us and take advantage of all the resources on our website. So with that being said, I guess we'll close out, and thank you all for watching.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Bye.